is time for the spinning of the wheel. And if we have anybody that's new that doesn't know about the wheel was a divine idea in the mind of creation to teach Rev Rafe how to let go, be in the moment, and let something bigger than him speak. Because I don't know what I'm going to talk about until I spin this wheel, and then I have to listen. And so it's like information is coming in here and coming out here, and I get to learn about it at the same time you do. So these are questions from the community, so that this is your service. Let's see where we're going today. How do I focus on my spiritual journey with so many distractions? Well, we'll find out. I'm chuckling with the idea that how do I focus on my spiritual journey with so many distractions, as I'm having an experience that perhaps the distractions are the spiritual journey. Thank you, online folks, for communicating that there was an annoyingly loud hiss. We did everything we could on the soundboard, and then I was walking back to my chair, and I realized that I was hearing this fan in the room, and so I unplugged it, and the reports are the hiss went away. So there we go. When buildings are not wired by sound engineers, you get these lovely things called ground fault 40 megahertz hums, and fans seem to like to create those. So there you go. That's going on. That's what all the was over here, trying to get it all squared away. Let's take a breath. The reciprocity of, what did I say? I have it in my head. But then there's those distractions. And we just get to live into them. How cool is that? The reciprocity of privilege and accountability. In the reading this morning, I just Google. I consult the gospel according to Google for lots of things. And this article came up by this beautiful young Kenya, from Ghana, South Africa, man. And it's way more involved than this excerpt. And I caught myself realizing that if someone who has been so systemically oppressed can grasp this idea of privilege demanding responsibility, perhaps the rest of us can at least get a clue. At least just begin to scratch the surface. The Bible talks about it, unto whom much is given, much is required. It's not a new concept. It's really not. But it's a concept of convenience. Right? Privilege is literally that place where you don't have to think about something unless you choose to. You don't have to. Right? When you have electricity flowing through your house, you don't have to think about whether or not you're going to have a light when you flip the switch. In fact, it probably doesn't even go through your head. You just flip the switch. But you don't have to think, when I do this, are the lights going to come on? That's privilege. Right? We've twisted up the concept of privilege to the point where we've made it repulsive. All of us have privilege. You have the privilege of breathing. Were you aware of that? That the very breath in your body is a privilege. Imagine if creation charged you by the breath. Could you afford to breathe? If you had to do a reaffirmation of need every month, would you remember to fill out the paperwork so you could keep breathing? I don't know that I would, until all of a sudden I wasn't breathing, and then it would be something that mattered. Privilege is those areas that we take for granted. Not by intention, not by design, not by maliciousness, but by privilege. Because we have the privilege to take it for granted. Right? But we've turned it into this thing, we've weaponized privilege at one another. Right? I've been doing diversity, equity, and inclusion work my entire life. And we used to actually have conversations. And now we've descended into this realm of the oppressed will oppress the oppressor until oppression stops. Good luck with that. We've just changed the flavor of oppression and called it self-righteousness. And it's a convenience. Because if I'm focused on everything that's wrong, I am creating a privilege to ignore my own behavior. Ouch. Right? We don't look at our self-righteousness as a privilege for which we get to be accountable. We get to be. So what is this thing of accountability? Right? In line with our theme of the 12 steps and 12 traditions, this week we're launching into the 9th tradition. Every group or the program or the institution or the organization or the community ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. Now, sometimes we take that ought never be organized to a problematic level. That is not a mandate to live in chaos. That's not what that's talking about. It's talking about scripted. It's talking about, so let's bring it home to right here. Our Center for Spiritual Living ought never be organized. It is not my job to tell you what to think. It is my job to teach you how to think. It is my job to engage in curiosity with you, to learn what you think. Because you may have newness for me. I am not. I've said this before. I will keep saying it until I cannot say it again. If I am the greatest authority you have, the situation is already way worse than you thought. I am not the authority on anything. At once I was delusional enough to think that I was actually the authority on me until I started experiencing the outcomes of my authoritarian thinking about me, and that didn't even work. It just doesn't, because that authoritarian certainty renders us no longer teachable. See, once I think I have the answer, I stop learning. How is that appropriate for an infinite being? How is that ever appropriate to stop learning for a being that is made out of infinite possibility? Right? Did suddenly infinite possibility run out of possibility? Did the whole concept of infinite just cease to exist now? Because when I think I have arrived at the final answer, that's what I'm saying. There's nothing else to learn. I have arrived. Okay, dude. That's my internal dialogue. When I hear myself even getting close, there's a little person in there that goes, okay, dude, it's your delusion. Eventually, something's going to wake you up. And it does. Right? What wakes me up is the evidence of my thinking reflected back to me. Anybody else experience that? Right? All of a sudden, there's your life staring back at you. And most of us, instead of accountability, what do? We got to blame somebody for this. Right? Somebody else did this. I'm going to be really transparent this morning. I laugh. I literally laugh when I watch intelligent people ranting and raving about one individual who lives in a temporary house in our nation's capital, as if one person walked in there, assigned themselves to a position, and then did a bunch of stuff to everybody. That's not how it works, folks. Whether we like it or not, we still live in a democracy. We still vote. And a whole lot of people voted. The evidence that lives on Pennsylvania Avenue is the evidence of the collective consciousness of this country. Now, you can not want to wrap your head around that. You can stay in the privilege of ignoring that. Blaming one person is privilege. And it is an intentional privilege of ignorance that sidesteps taking any responsibility. This is not a fun topic. It's a real topic. And there are consequences. When we talk about the reciprocal relationship between privilege and accountability, it's called consequences. Right? If I get in my vehicle and I go down the road and I see 55 miles per hour and my foot says 65 miles per hour, I should not be surprised if I encounter the consequence of a ticket. And it doesn't matter how many people were going the same speed. You like that one? Don't we all go there? Well, everybody else was going 65. How come they didn't catch everybody else? Because it was your turn. Some days you're the windshield, some days you're the bug. It was your turn. That doesn't change the reality that you chose to go 65. Fully informed of the consequences, you made a choice. And yet somehow we manufacture this idea of privilege that we should be the exception. And then we blame the law enforcement officer. We blame other people for not getting caught. That's always been a weird one for me. How is it their fault that you got caught because they didn't get caught, as if somehow all of you couldn't have gotten caught? If somebody else, if anybody else had gotten caught, I would not have. Really? I know we do it because I do it. We're not all that different from each other. Right? Perhaps our spiritual practice, our spiritual journey is all of the distractions. Perhaps it's about getting out of ignoring them and standing right in the middle of them and owning how we distract ourselves. Perhaps until we do that, we're really not on a spiritual journey so much as we're on a spiritual avoidance journey. I ain't judging, I'm just saying. And trust me, when I'm not just saying I'm judging, I'll tell you. I own it. Right? We have within us the clarity of consciousness itself. If we choose it, when we choose it, we know exactly what is ours to do. It's not a matter of will we know it, it's a matter of will we acknowledge that we know it. Will we, because that bridge between privilege and accountability is responsibility. The first time I realized how much of a trigger word that was, I was teaching a Science of Mind class. And apparently I use that word frequently. And one of the students in the class he's about to use the R word now. Apparently the F-bomb is easier for folks than the R word. Nobody wants to hear responsibility because we've made it a death trap rather than a bridge. What if responsibility is simply acknowledging your divine ability to respond? What if you reframe it? Because see, most of us, we hear the R word and we hear fault. Right? Instead of who's responsible, we hear whose fault is it? Well, you're responsible for that. We hear, that's my fault. We hear blame. We hear shame. And we respond with defensiveness. What if responsibility is simply owning that you are infinite intelligence and form? And so everything that you need, all the clarity that you need to know how to divinely, appropriately, perfectly respond to every situation and circumstance is already 100% fully present in, through, and as you. What if you knew that? Because it is. That's the makeup of your being. It's not available to you by telegram. You don't need a 5G network to tap into it. You know what we need in order to hear it, to feel it, to sense it? We need to shut up. We need to shut up. I was talking with somebody the other day, and they're going through a lot in life. A lot. And it's a metaphysician, and we both know with absolute certainty there's no God outside of ourselves. And we both are very much aware that sometimes it's helpful to contextualize it that way when we're deep in our humanity. And they made the comment, they imagined finally getting to that place where they're just like, okay, fine. I got nothing left. I surrender. And imagining this anthropomorphized being of God going, finally, now it's my turn. Right? Because sometimes that's the way it is. You know, the infinite is screaming at us, and it just needs us to shut up long enough for it to be heard. Finally, we run out of stuff then we can hear. That's why we do the meditation that we do in here every Sunday. In the silence, there is peace. In the silence, there is unspoken joy. That's where we find ourself, the essence of ourself, the clarity of ourself, the accountability. Because what we think we need to do to be accountable in this world may not be what is our spiritual accountability. But if we don't quiet ourselves, if we don't ask with sincerity, we will never know. And so I invite you, spend some time exploring. Where do you have privilege? Not from a punitive standpoint, but from an awakening standpoint. Where are the areas where privilege might be giving you permission to not be aware, to actively be unaware? If there's only one of us here, you're ignoring yourself. Right? When you turn away from somebody else's pain, you're abandoning yourself. When you don't care what happens to a group of people, you don't care about yourself. Either there's no separation or there is. You cannot have it both ways. You can't. And if you're living in separation, if you're choosing that, great. You have every right to do that. Right? There's no condemnation. Creation didn't give us the power of choice and decide to punish us for it. Groups of people made that up. They made it up. And I will end with this. Now, all that made up stuff, this is the big gun. This is the deep spiritual guidance I have as a minister. You ready? Let that shit go. Let it go. Quit fighting with the lie. Right? If you took 30 seconds and actually envisioned put characters to the mental wrestling match you have, make that like an MMA experience for yourself, where you're actually watching the different things wrestle. You'll be so amused, you'll be like, oh, I cannot know. And then imagine everywhere you go, people can see the wrestling match. Because they can. They see the outpicturing of it. You see the outpicturing of other people's wrestling matches. What if we actually, with a little bit of humor, embrace the ridiculousness of the wrestling match and just let go of the thing we're fighting against? It has to leave. If you stop engaging it, it stops being present in you. That's why we say you cannot heal something that you're against. You just keep it engaged. It can't leave. Right? Everywhere I go, there it is. But the minute I stop, off it goes. Let it go. You deserve to be free. The reciprocity, the full circle, is your freedom. And we're going to talk about that even more next week. How to actually do it. How do you focus? Start with the distractions. Instead of trying to avoid them, which just empowers them, start with the distractions. They might be there to save you. It just might be. It might be your unwillingness to hear that feels like a distraction. Perhaps it kind of, sort of, maybe in some of us could play out that way. Maybe. I'm just saying, it could. Let's take this to prayer. There is only one. It is indefinable, and yet completely knowable. Known as the essence of all life, experienced as the essence, as the substance, expressing itself as all life. The seen and the unseen, the formed and the unformed. Everywhere, every minute, every breath, every thought, every action, everything, and everything in between is this one. And so I know that I must be it in form. And what is true of me must be true of all life in the truth of one. And so I claim and affirm for the individualized expression of life as me and as all life, that we are awakening to the courageous journey of accountability. That we are awakening to a desire within to be whole, to pull together all of the fragments into a wholeness, accessing that perfect ability within to respond in spiritual love to every situation, to every expression of life. And as we do, all life is healed. Everything unlike it, wrapped in love, transformed. Wholeness expressed. One breath, one thought, one heart, one life, one activity at a time. Being fully present now and allowing the activity of law to move it in its perfect cycle of reciprocity. And so knowing that is the activity of law, that it simply makes everything work, I can let go. Because I know it's already done. Before I even see it, I know it is already done. So I let go. I let it be. And I invite you to join me in owning it as we say together. And so it is. Namaste.